here to talk to everyone about how to save our corals. Woo woo! So our coral reefs are currently becoming bleached, and I wanted to use my dress as a perfect metaphor for this. So I did write out some notes for myself because I tend to get a little bit carried away a lot of times because I'm very, very passionate, but I have been diving deep into the sea of Oxybenzone for the past over a year, and I have learned everything there is to know, read all of the studies, wrote papers, did graphs, charts, research, blah, 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 and I'm encouraged not to necessarily speak out against things, but this has become an issue where it's kind of impossible to stay quiet about, and I have all of this research and all of this information, and it's just gotten to a point where it's like a public health emergency, basically. And by the way, I'm also recording this on a normal video, so I can post it to like YouTube maybe. So if I'm looking over there, there's another camera over there. I'm not just a weirdo. I am a huge weirdo, but anyways. But so because I have a sunscreen company, I have been doing a lot of research over the past 3 years into sunscreens, their ingredients, and I have uncovered a lot about coral bleaching and oxybenzone and octinoxate, and those two chemical ingredients' effects on corals. And the reason I bring this up is because I have been devoted to it for the past 3 years of my life, learning everything there is to know about it, and I've just been like an absolute sponge, pun intended, with learning about oxybenzone and how to basically, I love the concept of the little steps that we can take as individuals to change the world, because all of these little things all compound up and it has an effect. And so up until now, it's kind of had an effect in terms of sunscreen use and the environment, where we haven't known a lot of things about sunscreen, and sunscreen is a very recent thing. So I'm a very visual learner, and I like to map things out and really understand things and draw themes together and whatnot. So I made this little timeline here of sun protection and kind of how it's been. And so in 1938, sunscreen was invented by a mountain climber who got really burned when he was in the mountains, and his name was Franz Greiter, and he was in the Pisbin Mountains in kind of Austria, Switzerland area, and so he created a SPF 2 sunscreen that he later released in 1946, which was the Glacier Cream. Hey guys, how's it going? David, Alex is on his way to see you soon, and Classy Love you. Let's plan something soon. And he created an SPF 2 basically, and then but bottom line is then the copper tone guy came out with like the copper tone and then put the, he called it the red vet pet because it was red veterinary petroleum, but it was really thick, so then they added what was it, the coconut oil to make it all oily, and then 56 the copper tone girl was invented, so then in the 60s sunscreen got a little bit bigger and like tanning and whatnot. But it was never really regulated, and UVA filters actually were just kind of discovered that they contribute to skin cancer, like 30-ish years ago. And so it was only in 1988 that they allowed the first UVA filter, because there's 2 types of rays. So this is really, really important background, but I can get into the meat of this as well. So basically, these chemical filters, particularly Oxybenzone, which is one of the 2 UVA filters that are even available. And so sunscreens have been made with Oxybenzone a lot because once they discovered that this UVA, which is the aging ray, so if you have your rays, then the UVA, they penetrate way deeper, and so they chop up your collagen and lead to aging, but then also create these things called reactive oxygen species, and they're really bad and you don't want those. And UVB is the burn, so it's the really short but intense ray, and that's what you get the burn from. So sunscreens have always been only UVB sunscreens, and so this has only been protection against these burning rays. So it was never protection against the aging rays. And so they invented this Oxybenzone, which is only for UVA rays. And then in 1997, they allowed people, like sunscreen companies, to actually advertise that it's only UVA, or that the sunscreen is superior because it also offers UVA protection due to its content of also having Oxybenzone. So that was like 30 years ago, to put it into perspective. And then starting around the 2000s, scientists were starting to discover some of the detrimental effects of some of these chemical filters, particularly Oxybenzone and octinoxate, but really, really Oxybenzone. And since 2003, they actually started to do studies about how Oxybenzone could affect the coral reefs. So that was 15 years ago already. And since then, the FDA proposed a rule to regulate the sunscreens, but they were still working on it and whatnot, and so it was basically kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of like a wild, wild west for sunscreen companies, where they would say, oh yeah, we have the best protection and SPF 100, which is like, really? Like, how do you accomplish that? And with what you're using to accomplish that, all it is completely misleading the public, and it's making people think that they're invincible with SPF 100, when usually those SPF 100s are with chemical filters, which deactivate much sooner, so, you know, and especially in the heat, and they're bad for the environment. And anyways, those are the ones that are the worst because they make you feel like, okay, yeah, it's protecting me from the burn, I'm not getting burned, I can stay out in the sun much longer. But those UVA rays and that consistent sun exposure for so long, all it's doing is building up all of those free radicals and everything, and you need antioxidants to help combat that, but that's for another video. But anyways, so tanning became popularized, and in 2008 they were doing more serious research about oxybenzone and corals, and were discovering that it had endocrine disrupting effects. So it affects the skeleton of the corals, which makes them lose their algae, and I will demonstrate that with my dress, but let me just check back with my notes here. Okay, so either the way the corals work first, or why it's important. Comments? Okay. Well, so with the whole oxybenzone and the coral reefs thing, and why is it relevant to us and everything, is that there's also not that many things that we can control in life. And yeah, it's true that the corals are also under exacerbated stress because of things like global warming, which is also leading to their stress and losing of algae. But as we all know, the tides have turned, and working against nature just doesn't work. So what are the tiny steps that we can take now that are just so simple and straightforward in order to make a difference? And coral reefs occupy less than 0.1% of the world's ocean surface, but they provide home for 25% of marine species. So they basically support our entire underground ecosystem, which, hey Trevor, which is basically the fuel for everything. And there's more species living on coral reefs than anywhere else in the world. And so even one drop of oxybenzone can affect up to 6 to 7 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And so 1 ounce, which is typically what is recommended, especially with chemical sunscreens to put on your skin, that's enough for I want to say 172. I can fact check that, but around there, Olympic-sized swimming pools of coral reefs. So this stuff spreads, and it's such an easy step for us to take to just look at the backs of our sunscreens and see if it has oxybenzone in it. And if it does, dispose of it in a appropriate way, because I will explain its toxicity. So you may have to go to a waste management treatment system. Not really, but you know, it's pretty much at that level. So also, it's estimated that 25% of sunscreen applied to the skin is washed off within 20 minutes of submersion, releasing approximately 4,000 to 6,000 tons of sunscreen into the surrounding waters of coral reefs per year. And when people say, oh yeah, but you know, that's not enough and da-da-da, especially in high tourist places, it is plenty. And usually, you know, it's estimated that you find these substances in maybe 1 part per trillion, you know? And these oxybenzone, they've been finding in numerous parts per million. Like 7 point something, 62 parts per million. I can check, I have my binder back here to fact check that, but just an insane amount. And it's everywhere because it absorbs, it disintegrates, and what happens to the corals is I'll just explain that. So what happens to the corals is the corals have these algae on them. I have some nice little references here. Okay. So the coral has this algae on it, as you can see. And so the algae and the coral have a symbiotic relationship. So the algae are called zooxanthellae. Zooxanthellae, yes, zooxanthellae. All right, I'm going to be saying this a lot, so I need to make sure that I get it right. Zooxanthellae, because this zooxanthellae lives in the coral's tissues, and the coral eats it to survive and to grow and prosper, and it also gives the coral their color. And so imagine that all of these little fuzzy things here were all little zooxanthellae living on this very healthy, beautiful, thriving, prospering coral reef, which is my dress. It's colorful, it's nice, it's healthy. But as it gets stressed due to also rises in temperatures, but there's also other stressors, including the most avoidable of them all by far is exposure to oxybenzone and octinoxate. But so imagine these are all of the healthy little algae, and they're all living on the coral, and they're living symbiotically, so happy because they work together to make this dress look really cool. And they need each other to survive and also to protect the skeleton and provide nutrients for all of the fish that live around them as well, which is, again, 25% of our marine ecosystem. And so what's going to happen when we do nothing about this and it just keeps declining? Because there's always something that we can do, and honestly, the absolute easiest thing to do that is so in our power and so in our hands is when the sunscreen is in your hand, just turn it over, look at the back, and see if it has oxybenzone. Because here is what oxybenzone does. Bum, bum, bum. So oxybenzone is an endocrine disruptor, and we have to give a hats off to Hawaii. Go Hawaii. They are the coolest state and so connected and involved and doing great things they're a great inspiration in every way to the rest of continental America. But, so I'm just going to read from their act, which was passed this year in May, and it outlines oxybenzone and octinoxate. So, Section 1. The legislature finds that two chemicals contained in many sunscreens, oxybenzone and octinoxate, have significant harmful effects on Hawaii's marine environment and residing ecosystems, including coral reefs that protect Hawaii's shoreline. Oxybenzone and octinoxate cause mortality in developing coral, increased coral bleaching that indicates extreme stress, even at temperatures below 87.8 degrees Fahrenheit. And because that's relevant because as the temperature increases, the coral are more susceptible to bleaching. And cause genetic damage to coral and other marine organisms. These chemicals have also been shown to degrade coral's resiliency and ability to adjust to climate change factors and inhibit recruitment of new corals. Furthermore, oxybenzone and octinoxate appear to increase probability of endocrine disruption. Scientific studies show that both chemicals can induce feminization in adult male fish and increase reproductive diseases in marine invertebrate species, for example, sea urchins, which is very important and we can get back to, vertebrate species like fish and eels and parrotfish, and mammals in species similar to the Hawaiian monk seal. The chemicals also induce deformities in the embryonic development of fish, sea urchins, coral, and shrimp, and induce neurological behavioral changes in fish that threaten the continuity of the fish population. Fish populations, in addition, see, it just keeps going on, like it never ends with this thing. In addition, species that are listed on the Federal Endangered Species Act and inhabit Hawaii's waters, including sea turtle species, marine mammals, and migratory birds, may be exposed to oxybenzone and octinoxate contamination. The legislature further finds that environmental contamination of oxybenzone and octinoxate persists in Hawaii's coastal waters as the contamination is constantly being refreshed and renewed every day by swimmers and beachgoers. Furthermore, the water activities pollute Hawaii's waters, and it will continue to do that until it's actively mitigated. And this is a huge thing for Hawaii to be the first to actively mitigate this because it is a huge issue, and all of this sunscreen research is relatively new in terms of what kind of options that there are available and whatnot. But the crazy thing is, what really isn't new is that for over 20 years, people have, so for over 20 years, scientists have shown that oxybenzone is really, really bad and that it's an endocrine disruptor and it bleaches corals. But it's in over, that and oxybenzone and avobenzone and octinoxate are in Over 80% of broad spectrum sunscreens in the US. So they're going to keep using it because they're making a bunch of money pushing out these sunscreens, and not to, stir anything up here, but I'm acting as a public service announcer. Neutrogena's Helioplex formula is just the Oxybenzone avobenzone combination, and that's all that Helioplex is just their word for that. And Oxybenzone is one of those things. So whenever you're buying anything Neutrogena Helioplex, it has Oxybenzone in it. And whenever you're buying so many things, so many sunscreens that are on the market, the majority of sunscreens that are on the market, it's going to have Oxybenzone or octinoxate or octinoxate. And so naturally, sunscreen companies will be fighting this, because how much money does it take to change all of your formulations and your key formulation? But it's like, you've known about this for 20 years. And if there's something you can do, then do it. And, we can't wait for these government officials and government entities to care enough or make up their minds or whatever to protect us and our coastal waters. And luckily, Hawaii is incredible and did it, and is such an inspiration to the rest of the states, and legislation is moving up the coast, and we're so proud of that. But at the same time, we don't have to rely on the legislators. All we have to do is just turn our sunscreen around, and if it says Oxybenzone, don't buy it. Just don't buy it, because it's not good for the environment and to get into the environment. And if there's even the smallest thing that you can do to potentially make a big change, and with everything else that the corals are fighting, hey, if you can do something that's so easy, why not do it? And you just have to know why. And even if it's not about the corals, Oxybenzone is absorbed into the skin and has been found in like 85% of mother's milk and 97%, I think, or something, of like urine samples, but I mean, I have to just tell the truth, because all of this is always sugar-coated, and it's always, stepping on eggshells, because there's so many other things going on, and you always want to be, politically correct and culturally correct, and not quote unquote talk negatively about anybody. But if it's literally a public health issue and a public health emergency and a coral emergency that supports a quarter of our marine ecosystem, then somebody's got to say it. And I've been reading everything there is to know about this for 8 months, 9 months, a year, so long. And I've written papers about it. I have my charts, my facts, my figures, my everything. But it's just like, I'm not trying to put anybody down. I'm trying to lift the world up. And, if all that it takes is just knowing that that's all that you have to do is just turn your sunscreen over and make sure it doesn't have oxybenzone or octinoxate, then bam, you've just done the world a huge favor. And the world needs more of those, and we all need to work together and do the tiny little things that we can do and that we have the power to do, because that's how we change the world. So with that, I will say goodbye. Also for pregnant women, really bad for pregnant women. It's found in, breast milk and causes effects in the fetus and birth defects as well. I have a bunch of information on it, like binders upon binders full. But we can leave it at that for now. I think this has been a while. So with that, I say cheers, everybody. Have a fantastic day, and next time you are looking for a sunscreen, please don't buy one with Oxybenzone, because you're taking a small step to save the reefs. And just keep being awesome, and the world appreciates all of your tiny little gifts of wonder into this world, because again, they all add up and make a big difference. And we do have the power to change the world and bring positivity and joy into it. So with that, have a great night, everyone.